here with Sian today, and we're going to talk about Bakasana, which is often translated as either crane or crow pose. And it's usually considered the blueprint of all of our arm balances. And for myself, I know as soon as I figured out how to come into Bakasana, all of the other arm balances just came swiftly right after that. And I think the key for me in how they cascaded into my other arm balances was figuring out how to use the lift of the belly, which meant that I couldn't climb one knee onto one arm and then the other knee onto the other arm. So both feet lift up at the same time. And it's usually something really small that we're struggling with. It's, for me, my hands were just too close together. So as soon as I moved my hands a half an inch further apart, then the foundation was set and I was able to lift into it. So we're going to break it down step by step. And Sian, when you're ready, you can come into a tabletop. And then we're going to come into a really, really awkwardly short tabletop. So you can move your hands and knees really close together. And you can see Sian's checking your hands because that would be the foundation when we come into Bakasana. So you want them shoulders distance, which usually means the middle finger is lining up with the center of the shoulder. And then even if you don't have tight shoulders, you might benefit by turning your hands out just a teeny tiny bit. We definitely want to make sure the fingertips aren't turning in because that's going to cause that internal rotation of the shoulder, which we never want when we're weight bearing. Okay, so once you've set your foundation, you're going to press into the hands and the knees to lift up between the shoulder blades and feel that lift and hollowing through the low belly. So you're in a really short, rounded cat shape. And then we're going to keep all of the rounding in the cat shape, but start to gaze forward and shift your shoulders forward. So as far forward of your wrists as you can. You might feel some pressure in the wrist crease, start to grip with the pads of the fingers, and you might notice that your feet want to start to lift up off the floor. And of course, there's a ton of pressure in the wrist, but try to notice where else you're feeling this. The low belly, the backs of the legs, the outer hips, maybe the inner thighs. So this is the work of your Bakasana. So you can lower your feet down, sit back on your heels. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is prop it up. So we're going to use as many props as we can to sort of find our comfort in the pose. So the first thing you'll do is grab your strap, and you can open the strap so that it's shoulders distance. And the loop in the strap around the elbows is going to make sure that our hands are only shoulders distance. And it's also going to stop the elbows from splaying out. So aside from our hands turning in, if the elbows splay out, that's another time that we end up in that internal rotation. So if you keep the strap just above your elbows, your arms can still bend, but when they bend, they'll bend back, so you'll keep the opening across your chest. And then the next prop that we're going to use is the bolster. And you're not actually using the bolster in any other way aside from a security blanket, so that you sort of trust yourself to shift forward and that you'll have something soft to land on should anything disastrous happen. Okay, and then the last prop would be a block, and the block's for our feet. So when we come into it, you're going to start with your hands on the floor and step your feet up onto the block, rather than having your feet on the block and then taking your hands down. Okay, so then you can take your hands to the floor and be as thoughtful as Sian was when she was setting up for her hands and knees. So they're shoulders distance, fingers spread wide, maybe turn the hands out just a tiny bit. And then she's going to lift her hips really high. And then she can start to bend the arms and try to settle the knees right on the upper arm. And then she starts to shift so far forward that her elbows are stacked over the wrists. And it's only once the elbows are stacked over the wrists that you might feel that sense of stability to maybe pull the feet up. And we're not going to, okay, you can. We don't have to pull the feet up in this version because we're just trying to get ourselves in like the starting block so that we feel that sense of stability. So you might have heard teachers say that the feet are just going to float right up. My feet never floated. It was more about finding that stability in the upper body that gave me the confidence to then squeeze my hamstrings to lift the feet. So you can work in either that short tabletop or you can work with the props for as long as you want to. And if you would like to try the full pose, you can, again, take your hands to the floor. So your hands will become your feet, so you want to be very mindful of where you place them. And then going back to what I said at the start of this, we want both feet to lift up at the same time. So if you're climbing one knee up onto the arm and then the other, you're going around the very muscles that we need to educate and intelligize or wake up to come into the arm balance. So we want both feet to lift up at the same time. So I like to lift my hips really high and come high onto the balls of the feet. And just for a second, you can see that Sian's knees and arms are not touching, right? But as soon as she bends her arms and pulls her chest forward, the knees are going to land on the upper arms. She's got her elbows stacked, beautiful, and the feet lift up, really nice. And you can lower your feet down whenever you're ready. The other really important thing about Bakasana is our gaze. So if you gaze straight down, you're going to go down. So you want to gaze forward and imagine pulling your chest to the spot you're gazing at. And then you can find that sense of stability in this very unnatural shape. And what's nice about Bakasana and all of our arm balances is it sort of shifts our perspective and how we have this inner strength within us that we didn't really think that we had before being able to do arm balances, or at least I didn't. Beautiful, Sian. Thank you.